Today, our fellow citizens, our way of life, our very freedom came under attack in a series of deliberate and deadly terrorist acts. Thousands of lives were suddenly ended by evil, despicable acts of terror.
Well, it was a gorgeous day. The president arrived just as usual for an event, a two-tiered event, a reading event in a small classroom, and then a larger speech to a crowd in a gym about education.
Welcome aboard. It's Fox and Friends, 2 minutes after 8 in the east, 2 after 5 out west.
It was just a regular schmegular day. I started my day at Bryant Park at a fashion shoot.
Liz Lang has got something a little extra.
There's a great item on the front page. It talks about how the
President Bush is in Florida encouraging reading programs, and the California grand jury has decided against investigating Gary Condit.
Toby from Brunswick, Maine is our pet of the day. We're taking a time out, plus a preview of the very latest fall TV shows. You're watching Fox Friends. We're nuts about nuts.
I was in the battle cap. We were starting a NORAD exercise. We have a couple of those a year. Also, because of the exercise, we had the fighters on alert with a little extra gas, with some more weapons on board than they normally would.
And the morning of the 11th, I received a call from an individual who I assumed was the exercise coordinators, asking if we had gotten a notification of a hijack situation approaching from the northeast.
Okay, my name is Betty Ong. I'm number 3 on flight 11.
Okay.
And the cockpit is not answering their phone. Our number 1 got stabbed. Our purser is stabbed. Nobody knows who stabbed who, and we can't even get up to business class right now because nobody can breathe.
You're doing a great job. Just stay calm, okay?
We have some planes. Just stay quiet and you'll be okay. We're turning to the airport.
What's going on your end, Ted?
We contacted air traffic control. They are going to handle it for the confirmed hijacking.
Okay.
He turned his transponder off, so we don't have a definitive altitude for him. They seem to think that he is descending.
A note was handed to me just as we were coming out of our video teleconference. Boston Center has a suspected hijacked airplane. I have put the F-15s at Otis Air National Guard Base on battle stations, and I said, scramble them, we'll hold them out over the water until we get the permissions if necessary. It's a hijacked airplane. We know nothing about it at all. Don't know where it is. Do not know where it is.
What's going on, Betty? Betty, talk to me. Betty, are you there?
We just had a plane crash into Alpha 4 of the World Trade Center. The World Trade Center, tower number 1, is on fire. The whole outside of the building.
We have a very tragic alert for you right now. An incredible plane crash into the World Trade Center here at the lower tip of Manhattan.
It's believed a 737 has crashed into. There's speculation at this point, but at least 3 floors taken out, crashed into the side of the building. Joining us right now, one of the producers with Fox Report, Owen Mugen on the scene. Owen, what do you know? What do you see? Where are you?
Yeah, Brian, I'm on the roof of my building, which is about 5 blocks to the south of the World Trade Center. I'm looking right now at the World Trade Center. There's a massive gaping hole on the second tower. It's about 15 stories from the roof. It's just unbelievable to look at. There's a massive hole.
Fire Department 408, where's the fire?
Yeah, hi. I'm on the 106th floor of the World Trade Center. We just had an explosion up here.
Okay, 106th floor. What building are you in, sir? 1 or 2?
1 World Trade.
All right.
See the smoke coming up from outside the windows down?
Okay. Just sit tight. All right, just sit tight. We're on the way.
All right, please hurry.
The plane obviously went in on one side and came out the other. This is horrible. Right now, let's hand it over to John Scott.
You can see the smoke. The smoke tower is growing. There is quite a bit of flame inside the building. I was just walking into the studio that day. I wear this little wireless IFB, we call it, and I heard this very urgent voice get in my ear and say, "John Scott, Studio B, now!" And it was just a minute or two later that we got the pictures up from the Fox 5 helicopter. And I mean, what could you say? The two towers are home, at least during the day, to upwards of 50,000 workers in those 220 floors.
We have a number of floors on fire. It looked like the plane was aiming towards the building.
I was on the 67th floor when the first plane hit, and it took me a second or two to catch my breath.
So I'm walking on B4, going towards the parking lots. All of a sudden, the whole floor, the whole building just rocked. It just rocked and threw you, and just threw you. You didn't know what happened.
At 8:46, when boom, there's this loud explosion noise somewhere, didn't know exactly where. All I saw right up against the glass was fire, flame, just a big fireball.
I'm looking at something that's steel, and all of a sudden it's ripped like it's paper because of whatever just passed through there. And then this big heat comes blowing through the corridor that I'm in, and then there's silence.
For no apparent reason, I just turn looking toward Jersey over the Hudson, and I see fireballs falling down from the sky. I don't know what's happening, what's going on.
These are coming to you live now. Debris raining down from 110 floors up. As you can see, this is a clear blue sky day in Manhattan. If this was an accident, it would be a needle in a haystack kind of accident.
I was actually in New York in my office. Like everyone else, or most other people, I thought, my God, how could this possibly happen? But never suspected the magnitude of what was facing us.
I was in my office with my speechwriter, and the secretary called in to say that a plane had hit the Trade Center. We turned on the television and sat there wondering, how could an airplane hit the World Trade Center? It's a clear sky, no weather problems. How do you account for this?
It's one of those normal Tuesday mornings, and I was standing at my desk getting ready for my staff meeting downstairs with my senior people, and my executive assistant walked in and said that a plane had hit the World Trade Center. And immediately my mind went to perhaps a twin-engine plane of some kind, and I said, well, that's a terrible accident.
And as I was leaving the motorcade, I got a page telling me the World Trade Center had been hit by an airplane. So as the president was shaking hands going into the school, Karl Rove got to the president first and told the president the plane has hit the World Trade Center. The president went directly into a holding room.
And I called the president and said, Mr. President, a plane has hit the World Trade Center. And he said, that's strange, a strange accident. And I said that I would call him back when we had more information.
The first moments, I called Mayor Giuliani right away and got a hold of him. Right after I got off the phone with Rudy, I called the president. He was in Florida at the educational conference, and I was able to get him out of the conference and urge him to shut down the airspace over New York.
The walk down was very calm. People in the staircase were well behaved. They were calm. Occasionally, somebody would become anxious, but somebody else in the stairwell would put their arm around them and say, it's okay, we're doing fine. When we got around the mid-20s, we began to see firemen walking up the stairs, and for the people walking down, the sight of the firemen was a very calming experience. When I got into the lobby and see the damage there, the full impact was really beginning to dawn.
Now you hear silence, and it's a dead calm of dust and smoke, and all of a sudden you hear people slowly, somebody starts screaming, someone starts yelling, someone starts saying, you're hearing help. You're hearing pleas, you're hearing one at a time you're hearing it. And it just started, and all of a sudden everybody started screaming. Everybody started coming out, what happened, what happened, what happened?
As one of the volunteer fire marshals on our floor, I jumped up, grabbed my flashlight from my overhead credenza, put a whistle around my neck, and ran out of my private office into the larger office and said, come on everybody, let's go. There's been an explosion upstairs. We've got to move. Let's get out of here.
Elevator came, we went downstairs. We were on the ground floor now, about to get through the turnstile. The security guard asked us, where are you going? I said, well, I saw fireballs coming. We're getting out of here. No, go back to your office. Your building is secured. It is safe.
There was an announcement. The strobe lights flashed normally, siren whoop whoop a little bit, and there was this very clear announcement. Building 2 is secure. Well, that took a little bit of pressure off. I went for a walk to the east floor, which is where our trading floor is, and walked up to the north wall. And there were a lot of our people against the glass looking up. To their left, you could see the North Tower. And very sadly, at that moment, what they were looking at was people jumping.
It was all smoke and fire, and the walls were caved in. You couldn't even see the exit. You couldn't even see the exit getting into Tower 1. You couldn't get back into Tower 1. So I'm saying, let's go. It looks like a clear shot home. You're going towards building 2. Let's go. Whoever can make it, let's go.
I'm just at a 9,500, 9,000 now. Do you know who he is? We don't know who he is. We're just picking him up now. All right, heads up, man. It looks like another one. All right.
Space, it's Craig. Are you there? Space. Okay, listen. Hearing news reports, a plane crashed into the other tower of the World Trade Center. Actually right near us. I mean, we can see it clearly. It's right on our level, too.
I had 2 messages left on my answering machine. One just saying, Stace, it's me, pick up, because we screened our calls all the time. And the next, that was 8:49. And then another message at 8:54, and it was him again, letting me know that I was going to be hearing on the news that the other tower had been hit.
Everyone here is okay. It's kind of pandemonium, though, just because we don't know what the heck happened there. So give me a call when you get this, okay? Bye.
He was eye level with Tower 1, and he was watching people jump to their deaths. And then to know that he was about to die after his tower was hit, there's some pain and suffering.
Wherever it was, hit the north side of the building, fire vented from at least 1 floor, heavy smoke show over the front and on the top of the building.
I just stepped off the elevator on 78, 2 steps, and the plane hit, and had no idea what it was. A lot of the walls just disintegrated, and the elevator doors blew out, and flames shot out. So a few minutes after this happened, it was obvious that this was something a lot worse than what I originally thought it was.
10-4, we have units on the way up now. We're reporting fire on the 78th floor. That's unconfirmed time.
I worked my way over to what I guess was the main exit stairwell. It was probably in the middle of the building, somewhere in the middle of the tower, and started going down 78 floors. We heard another noise, and the building shook again. Not as much as the first time. That had to be the second plane hitting the other tower. Somewhere in the 30s, 30s or 40s, the first firemen and policemen started coming up, and I finally made it down to the ground floor. We came out right in front of the plaza, which is the area between the 2 towers where the fountain is, and that was horrible. That was a war scene. There were fires. There was debris falling from both towers. I saw dead bodies out there. Right in front of the window, right in front of me, there was a body strapped to an airplane seat.
There was another one. We just saw another one. We just saw another one apparently go. Another plane just flew into the second tower. This has to be deliberate, folks. We just saw on live television as a second plane flew into the second tower of the World Trade Center. Now, given what has been going on around the world, some of the key suspects come to mind. Osama bin Laden.
My first instinct was, what is going on? How many planes are there? Where are they coming from? who are they? And who do I call for air support? You know, I'm the police commissioner, and I have 41,000 uniformed members, 55,000 people work for me, and we're prepared for anything you could imagine. This was something you couldn't imagine.
Walk back down the hallway, back to my desk, and the phone is ringing again. This time it's a young lady from Chicago, one of our rep offices. Stan, are you okay? I'm fine. And for no apparent reason in mid-sentence, I just happened to raise my head watching straight toward the Statue of Liberty. And what I'm seeing here is a big, giant aircraft, gray, with red letter in the wing and the tail, coming straight, eye contact, eye level towards me. The next thing I know, I dove onto my desk, huddled in a fetal position, screaming, crying, and the plane crashed in the building. The plane from coming straight towards me, and the bottom wing is wedged in my office door, 20 feet from where I was, under the desk.
I know whatever blew up in the building, a lot of it came down the shafts and blew out everything, and elevator cables snapped. When you hear a 10,000 pound, 20,000, 40,000 pound elevator coming down the shaft, you're hearing people screaming, then all of a sudden you don't hear them screaming, you know the wall, you know they just died. Whatever was over there just died because it was just silence.
You have a second plane into the other tower of the Trade Center, major fire.
At 9:03 or whatever time it was when apparently the second plane hit, when boom, boom, there was a double explosion. I learned later it was the plane hitting the building and then it exploding. And for the next 10 seconds, I was terrified.
The impact was so great and the sound that it made was so loud that I got temporarily deaf. I couldn't hear anything. And it looked like a demolition crew came in and just knocked everything over.
The building just continued to move. Left, left, left toward the Hudson River, a long, long way. It felt like yards. Whether it was or not, I don't know. But the sensation was, we are going too far. We're going to fall over. Something's happened. I also knew in an instant it was terrorism. And the room just fell apart on that second explosion.
Division 1, be advised. 3 Adam reports that you have a second plane that crashed into the second tower about 2/3 of the way up. He recommends you transmit a 5th alarm for that tower as well.
Walls tore in jagged angles. Some door frames fell out of the walls. It was a mess, but it was as if somebody had ripped open a concrete sack and just waved it in the air. There was yellow, white dust everywhere.
And I'm crying. I'm saying, Lord, I don't want to die. I don't want to die here. I have 2 little children. Please, Lord, take me. Please, Lord, save me. Send somebody, anybody to help me.
The building just swayed forever one way, but then it came back to vertical, and then I sort of snapped out of it and sobered up, turned on my flashlight.
As we were in that small tier event in the classroom, I got a second page telling me the second tower had been hit. And right away I knew it was terrorism. Shortly after I got that page, Andy Card walked in and whispered in the president's right ear that the second tower has been hit, America is under attack. I remember I put my back to the press pool and I wrote on the back of a yellow legal pad, "Don't say anything yet," and I held it up for the president to see.
Our Wendell Goler is at the White House, make that Sarasota. He is traveling with the president. Wendell Goler, what's the reaction from the president?
John, the president is here promoting a reading initiative on the second day of a 2-day trip to Florida. He just finished reading to some children at the Emma Booker Elementary School and was asked about the incident. He said he was aware of it and that he would have something to say about it later.
I'm gonna die, aren't I? No. Say your, I'm gonna die. Ma'am, say your prayers. And we're gonna think positive because you gotta help each other get off the floor. I'm gonna die. No, stay calm. God. You're doing a good job, ma'am. You're doing a good job. You're doing so hot. I'm burning up. You guys have jumpers, baby. Jumpers. All right, Division 1, be advised. Battalion 2 advised you have jumpers from the World Trade Center, okay?
And it is beyond belief. Both towers of the World Trade Center are burning. Both have apparently been hit by aircraft.
My first reaction was to get down to the scene as fast as I could. As I was driving down, emergency vehicles were going, obviously, flying down to the scene, and I jumped behind a police car and drafted it all the way down and pretty much got 2 blocks from the scene.
Very first thing we did was we got some establishing shots.
I got close to the tower and was shooting it, but it was so tall that I had to keep backing up to get a better shot.
And when I got the first tight shots, I realized what was happening up at the top of the towers.
And I look up, and people start shouting, they're jumping. And I look up just in time to see someone leap from what must have been the 108th floor.
I just do not believe this is happening. This is ridiculous. Please stop jumping.
They really must have felt like they had no other choice. That decision that they made remains for me the most horrifying part of the whole tragedy.
I realized there were jumpers and people lining up in the window wells, and I shot the first 2 that I saw and then turned off my camera because I was overcome with emotion, actually.
You're conscious of what's happening, but it's sort of, looking through the viewfinder is sort of an insulator. It's black and white. It's not color.
Field car number 2, World Trade Center, on the 8-3 and the 8-4 floors and the 8-2 floor. People trapped at this time.
I think they knew early on they weren't going to be able to put the fire out. They wanted to get rescuers up there as quickly as possible, as high as possible, not concerned about the fire at that point.
As I heard a banging and a voice screaming for help, "Help, help, I'm buried. Is anybody there? I can't breathe, help."
This is Stan from the loans department. Please don't leave me to die. Somebody help me.
The stranger's voice kept directing us, "No, this way, come over here."
So even though he was responding, I couldn't hear. So I tried to get up from under the desk, and I realized I was covered up to my shoulder in debris. And I can peek through all the rubble, and I saw the bottom wing starts to burn. And my greatest fear was this plane was going to ignite. This flame was going to ignite. The fuel tank is going to explode. I was going to die. So I crawled the entire length of the loans department, through the lounge, into the computer room, into the communication room, and I couldn't go further because there was one sheetrock wall which was blocking myself. He says, "Jump over and I'm going to grab you." And I got up from that prayer and I started to punch and kick as hard as I can until a little hole appeared in the sheetrock. And he said, "I see your hand." I said, "Well, when you see my head, just yank me through." And I jumped and I grabbed and I stuck my head through.
And I reached in, nothing happened. I said, "You must do this." And up he went again, and I reached in and somehow got under his arm or grabbed onto something, and I lifted him up and over this barrier, and we fell in a heap on the floor.
This man, he just gave me a headlock. With all his might, he just pulled. And he just yanked me right through that wall. It was like a Superman. He just yanked me through and I fell on top of him. And I gave him a big hug and a kiss and I said, "You were my guardian angel. My Lord sent you to save me."
And we started down the stairs. The inner wall of the fire stairs had blown in, and we could look through the cracks, and you could see flames just licking up the other side of the wall as we went down through this area.
We stopped at the floor because I couldn't breathe properly. I couldn't walk down. I was cut, I was bloody, I was bruised, and the leg wound was opening up.
We went as low as the 44th floor, and I know that as a sky lobby. It was like an empty hotel lobby until a security guard manning his booth looked at us wide-eyed, was rather surprised to see us, and just quickly said, "Have you got telephone?" And he said, "My phones don't work." He said, "But I'll stay with this man if you'll get me help."
A man was lying. His back was broken. He was covered with blood. "Please tell my wife and my baby I love them, but send somebody up for me." But a security guard stood like a hawk guarding that man. That man sacrificed his life guarding this man. Because while we were going down, no EMS worker came up.
Stanley called his wife at his office, missed her, but left messages that he was fine. And I called 911, and after some difficulty, it took me 3 or 4 minutes to really get the message across that there was somebody down on the 44th floor. I know they were overwhelmed that day, but Stanley and I went back to the stairs, and we went all the way down to the plaza level without seeing a soul. Nobody. On the plaza level, we stared in awe at the plaza where the fountain is normally flowing and there's people coming and going. Now, we know nothing about hijacked airplanes, about the Pentagon, none of this. We're ignorant of all these facts.
We got down to the ground floor. Only cops and firefighters and EMS workers were there. Debris was falling down. It looked like confetti in a ticket day parade. And they were telling us to run. Just go, run, run, run. They stayed back, sacrificing themselves so that Brian and I could live.
Attention all units, by the order of the citywide tour commander, all off-duty firefighters and all off-duty officers are hereby recalled. Repeating, by the orders of the citywide tour commander, all off-duty firefighters and all off-duty officers, you are hereby ordered for recall immediately.
President Bush is about to speak. He's in Florida. That was what was supposed to be a joyous event at an elementary school. Let's listen in.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a difficult moment for America. I unfortunately will be going back to Washington after my remarks. Secretary Rod Pace and Lieutenant Governor will take the podium and discuss education. I do want to thank the folks here at Booker Elementary School for their hospitality. Today we've had a national tragedy. 2 airplanes have crashed into the World Trade Center in an apparent terrorist attack on our country. I have spoken to the Vice President, to the Governor of New York, to the Director of the FBI, and have ordered that the full resources of the federal government go to help the victims and their families, and to conduct a full-scale investigation to hunt down and to find those folks who committed this act. Terrorism against our nation will not stand. And now, if you join me in a moment of silence. May God bless the victims, their families, and America. Thank you very much.
We saw the second airplane fly into the South Tower of the World Trade Center. So we decided to scramble the F-16s out of Langley Air Force Base.
The traffic's kind of crawling along. I'm actually flicking through the radio. They're talking about how the Washington, D.C. is also on high alert status because they think that might be the next target.
I walked into the Hall of States building. A group of people were sitting around the television, ready for our meetings.
After the rush hour would normally have ended, and yet I ended up getting stuck in rush hour like traffic on the road just to the west of the Pentagon.
But we got a call that American Airline 77 then was a potential hijacked aircraft.
As we sat down to have the meeting for this client, one of the people said, well, Barbara Olson won't be here because she's on a plane to California.
The plane took off at 8:10 in the morning, or that's when it was scheduled to take off. I had been in my office at the Department of Justice. One of the gals in my office came in and said, Barbara's on the phone. I was at first relieved to hear Barbara on the telephone because panic strikes immediately. Then her next words out of her mouth were that, Ted, my plane's been hijacked.
We're watching all these aircraft in the system and trying to determine where they are.
We'll just put them in back to direct St. Louis and they can put in whatever they want just so we can stand them off back. That's American 1060. United 93, verify 350. United 1523, did you hear your company, did you hear some interference on the frequency here a couple of minutes ago, screaming?
Yes, I did, 797, and we couldn't tell what it was either.
Okay. United 93, Cleveland, if you hear the center ident.
Sit down. Keep remaining sitting. We have a ball board. So,
Calling Cleveland Center, you're unreadable. Say again slowly.
Did you hear the transmission where the airplane that said he had a bomb on board?
Say again. Was that United 93?
Yeah, that transmission he said was unreasonable. It sounded like someone said they have a bomb on board.
That's what we thought. We just we didn't get it clear.
The pilot had announced that the plane had been hijacked. She said it had been hijacked shortly after takeoff. By this time, the plane had been in the air for over an hour. She implied that they had been circling around for a while. She and the other passengers had been herded to the back of the airplane. I asked her whether they, the hijackers, knew that she was calling, and she said, no, they don't know. She indicated that they had used knives and box cutters to take over the plane. At some point, we got cut off. I immediately called the command center of the Department of Justice to let them know that my wife was on a plane that had been hijacked.
As I keep driving, I noticed this plane coming in really fast and really low. And I notice it's a silver, it's an American Airlines jetliner, and it's obviously a passenger plane. It's a pretty big one.
I told her in the first conversation that the two hijacked planes had hit the World Trade Center. Her instinct was, what shall I tell the pilot? What can I do? And I asked her where she was, and she tried to tell me where she was and what direction.
Flight 77 made a left turn heading back after it was hijacked. They came back over Washington fairly high, and then he did a left descending turn, which gave him good visual visibility of the Pentagon.
I heard it before I saw it. I looked up, and then directly in front of my field of vision, parallel to the ground, I saw a jet airplane with the silver paint job with the red, white, and blue stripes underneath the windows. It was clearly an American Airlines passenger jet come roaring by.
We did not know where that aircraft was. And then just moments later, that aircraft hit the Pentagon. And of course, our aircraft that are headed towards Washington, D.C. are well south of there. At that time, they were not yet over Washington, D.C.
It didn't veer from its course at all. It was like a missile right into the side of the Pentagon.
And then a huge fireball comes up in the air. There's all kinds of smoke coming out, and I could feel the actual impact of the explosion because the ground really shook. And even though my windows were up in the car, I could feel the heat from the fireball.
David Asman is joining us from Fox Central. John, we are hearing right now of another explosion that has taken place at the Pentagon. We have the heart of the financial district of America being attacked. Now we understand that there is an explosion, there has been an explosion in the Pentagon.
I began to hear reports of the explosion at the Pentagon, and I knew in my heart that was that aircraft.
I think we just had an airplane crash. It was an American Airlines plane headed eastbound over the Pike, possibly toward the Pentagon. There is visible smoke coming from that area, high visible smoke.
It was instantaneous, just a very loud noise. The lights went out, everything's black, very heavy smoke, debris piled on top of me, so I'm pinned in my chair at my desk.
As I came into focus a little closer, in this pile of debris, I saw what looked like a face. I was pretty sure it couldn't possibly be an alive person, but then I thought I saw it wink or blink, and I yelled for help, and from outside came Lieutenant Commander Dave Tarantino.
It feels like a furnace in there, and couldn't believe there's anyone alive in there. And I saw Captain Thomas, who was trying to pull some debris. And I looked off to my side, and I saw Mr. Henson about 10 feet away inside this kind of cave of debris. Already my uniform's starting to melt, my shoes are starting to melt. So I'm really, really eager for him to get out of there and go, but he says he can't budge. And so out of desperation, I laid on my back underneath him, and I put my feet up on the debris over his head, and I leg pressed as hard as I could.
With me pushing with my back against this pile and him pushing up with his legs, he managed to get most of the debris up far enough to extricate himself from this huge pile of rubble that had pinned him to his desk.
I think the total thing took about 30 minutes, so I didn't think I had very much time left when the rescue team came in.
Somebody was still up in there. We couldn't get everybody out. My boss didn't make it. The whole admin section of the general didn't make it. I think there were 5 of us in the section that survived.
DC Fire EMS is going to our Plan E. That's an emergency plane which requires all off-duty personnel to report back to their duty stations immediately.
Hey, this is Steve at the White House. They're trying to evacuate the White House.
The White House is being evacuated. That comes to us from one of our Fox producers in Washington. The White House is being evacuated. The Pentagon as well.
You guys can pack up and go. What? Plane we just hijacked 20 minutes south from here, and they're headed towards the Capitol.
Hold on, urgent, get me on the 320 now!
Jim Engel, are you with us?
The streets around the White House were blocked seconds ago. There are emergency vehicles on almost every block around the White House. And as you know, the White House is being evacuated. Federal employees are standing on the street corners in and around the White House, having left the building for fear of another attack.
Get back! Get back! They got another inbound flag!
As they brought me out, I could see people running. People were crying, hurry up and get these people out because there's another one right behind. They must have had some input on the Pennsylvania airplane.
By now, we are firmly up on orbit over Washington, D.C., and we're watching United 93 now start very gradually to take up a flight path right towards Washington, D.C., and we were very concerned at that time.
Hi, this is Captain. I would like to remain seated. We are on board and we are going to back to the airport and we have our demand, so please remain quiet. Okay, it's United 93 calling. United 93, understand, have a bomb on board, go ahead. Executive 956, did you understand that transmission? Affirmative, he said there was a bomb on board.
As it started moving towards Washington and we had F-16s over Washington, D.C., I was probably energized to start moving those fighters towards that aircraft. We decided to be wiser to keep the F-16s over Washington, D.C. in case another aircraft were coming in from a different quadrant that we didn't see yet.
One of my agents all of a sudden showed up beside me and grabbed me and said, "Sir, we have to leave now." There's no chance for debate. He just sort of propelled me out of the office down into the underground. And we got down to a place, tunnel, that was protected. So when I got down into the tunnel, we saw that the Pentagon had been hit. That was on television. And I called the president again. He was then headed for the airport in Florida, and urged him not to return to Washington because Washington was now under attack.
Flight 93 was the only aircraft that we could see on our radar at that particular time. It was either slightly before or right around the time that the American Airline 77 had hit the Pentagon. And we could see this aircraft flying around up in the Ohio and Pennsylvania area.
United Airlines called me and told me that Todd had made a phone call to an operator. He had initially called just to report a hijacking. He felt at that time that this was a normal sort of situation where the hijackers were going to return them to the airport and there was going to be some demand made.
I heard Mark's voice saying, "I'm on a flight from Newark to San Francisco. There are 3 guys on board who've taken over the plane and they say they have a bomb. And I'm calling you from the airphone." And then there was a long pause, and "Mom, you believe me, don't you?" And I said, "Yes, Mark, I believe you. Who are these guys?" And there was another long pause. Then Mark's voice came back on the line and he said, "You believe me, don't you, Mom?" And I said, "Yes, Mark, I believe you. Who are those guys?" And then we were disconnected.
You've reached the mobile phone voicemail. Mark Bingham, leave a message.
Mark, this is your mom. The news is that it's been hijacked by terrorists. They are planning to probably use the plane as a target to hit some site on the ground. I would say go ahead and do everything you can to overpower them because they're hell-bent. I'll try to call me back if you can.
He told me immediately that he was on a plane that had been hijacked, and he gave me a few details of what was going on and told me to call the authorities, and he hung up.
I said, "Do you know who's flying the airplane?" She says, "No, I don't. We've all been herded to the back."
He knew that there were 2 people at the front of the plane who were hurt. They had pulled the curtain to first class, so he couldn't see what was going on up there at that point.
On the second phone call, I told him immediately that the World Trade Center had been hit, that other airplanes had been hijacked, and he paused and told the people sitting around him. He was alarmed, and then he said, "My God, it's a suicide mission."
The plane turned around and started to dip and things as they changed their course back to Washington.
In the third phone call, I told him about the Pentagon. He told me at that point that he was putting a plan together to take back the airplane, And I asked who was helping him, and he said, there's a group of us.
We're back here getting hot water together to throw on them. Do you have any other ideas for us?
They were going to rush this hijacker with the bomb and attempt to get into the cockpit. He said it's what we have to do. And it wasn't long after that that she heard him say, asked the men around him, she said, are you ready?
We're all running to first class. I've got to go. Bye.
And then he said, let's roll. And that's the last she heard.
We know that the passengers made a rush on the cockpit and thwarted the hijackers. We know that because the cockpit voice recording, they knew that there was a movement afoot in the back and that their moments were numbered up front. And we heard, someone heard on the cockpit voice recording, they're coming. And there was a tremendous thrashing around of dishes and carts back and forth.
This plane was at least 30 degrees, if not a little more, and it would rapidly go to 30 to 45 degrees the other way and rocking back and forth. I guess there was a fight going on and the airplane was rolling from the right to left to right to left.
We heard blood screams happening more than once, and I don't believe it was the passengers who were screaming.
They were rolling, violently, rolling back and forth.
The hijackers were panicked. They were talking with each other, do you want me to end it now? And I believe that was their signal that, hey, we're going to crash now because we're about to lose control of this airplane.
I am absolutely convinced that fourth plane would have hit the Capitol, but for those heroes in Pennsylvania.
United 9-3, have you got information on that yet?
Yeah, he's down.
He's down?
Yes.
When did he land? Because we have confirmation.
He did not land.
Oh, he's down?
Yes, somewhere up northeast of Camp David.
Authorities at the Somerset County Airport confirm a large plane crash about 80 miles southeast of Pittsburgh. You've got to assume that it's related to all of these goings-on.
And I told Brian, I said, this is the Lord's doing, and I'm going to Trinity Church. And he said, look, I'm coming with you. And together we grabbed each other's hand and we just started to run. Surprising enough, not even one piece of confetti or broken glass touched us. And the next thing I know, we bumped into a priest.
That's where Stanley broke down, and he looked at me and he said, this man saved my life. And I said to Stanley, I think maybe you saved my life too. And he said, I think that tower could go down. And I said, there's no way. I said, that's steel, that's a steel structure. And I didn't finish the sentence.
We started to run. And we heard a strange sound, like steel bending and creaking. And the building started to implode. It came down like a pancake effect.
Major collapse in one of the towers.
Tower, okay.
Tower 2. The South Tower, major collapse.
Oh my God! Oh my God, Rick, move! Oh my God!
We set up to go live. Within a minute or two after he got the camera hooked up and we set up to go start reporting in the street, that's when the first tower fell.
We heard the rumble like thunder, but it wasn't as loud as I expected it to be.
Holy dude, let's get the camera out there. What shot is that? The mass cam? Oh my God, look, dude, look. Look, point that way. Oh my God.
Just as I was about to come up as I was going up the stairwell on the Church Street side, the building started shaking up and down, a couple feet in either direction. The fireman at the top said, hit the deck.
We're on Church Street. We're not sure what happened. There's been a huge explosion. Everyone's running for their lives, literally. Police, media. I see a woman pushing a baby carriage. Here comes the smoke.
I couldn't see anything because of all the dust, all the lights were out.
After the South Tower fell, that was the first time the panic set in, because realizing the South Tower was hit second and fell first, now you really had to worry about getting people out of North Tower as quickly as possible.
I pushed up and out and realized I was still alive. I didn't even know if I was alive or not.
It's gone! The whole tower! It's gone! Holy crap! They knocked the whole freaking thing down!
Here comes the smoke. It's unclear what happened, if the tower collapsed or what, but I think we better get out of this mess, dude. I think we better get out of this.
We jumped in the truck with the camera and left about an inch or two crack in the door with the cable being inside the truck.
Oh my God. We might die here together, you and me. You all right?
We were in the dark, literally, and it was frightening. It was a frightening moment to have no connection with the outside world and to have no idea what was going to happen next.
We shouldn't be here, should we?
Everybody else ran. Cops, everybody. I don't know what to do. I mean, assignment danger, bro.
Get out of the building! Get out of the building!
John, the scene is horrific. One of the two towers literally collapsed. I was making my way to the foot of the World Trade Center. Suddenly, while talking to an officer who was questioning me about my press credentials, we heard a very loud blast, an explosion. We looked up, and the building literally began to collapse before us. There was debris falling, I'd say at least 3/4 the height of the building. People within the entire perimeter began literally, including myself, which is why I'm out of breath, to run for our lives.
This is actually, we believe, debris from one of the planes that hit one of the towers on the World Trade Center. The FBI is here, as you can see. They had roped this area off. They were taking photographs and securing this area just prior to that huge explosion that we all heard.
Everything just all of a sudden just imploded. I ran as fast as I could, and then all of a sudden the building started filling up with smoke. We couldn't get out of the building because everything was locked up. And then I came out, and everything was filled with ash.
Can anybody hear me? I'm a civilian. I'm trapped inside of one of your fire trucks underneath. Stand by, there's people close to you. I can't breathe much longer. Please save me. I'm in the cab of your truck. I can barely breathe. Please save somebody.
You were right there at the building?
Yes, there's a lot of people trapped.
A lot of people trapped. EMT. This guy needs help. Can you talk to us for a minute? Just tell us what you saw, what you heard. How you feel? You all right?
No, not at all.
I feel bad approaching these people. I mean, they're covered. They're obviously in pain.
In the place where that plane hit, the outer wall of the building, and of course that building, as you know, is a series of concentric rings, so that when you hit the outer wall of the building, you're only affecting really that part of it, but that those walls are down and you can see the gutted areas.
And the whole place blew. Everything came down. Couldn't see, couldn't breathe. It's terrible. I never seen nothing like it. I went through Tet in Vietnam, and I never seen anything like this.
But can they go in based on the conditions of the building?
Somebody's going to have to. That's what we get paid for. Because as soon as we heard the explosion, we ran out of New York State Supreme Court, jumped on our jury bus, came...
All right, here we go again. Here we go again. I don't know what's going on, but the second building is collapsing, I believe. I don't know. But this happened before. Come on, just back up. Come over this way, Pat. Fine, we will. We can see the top of the building from here. Oh, yeah. Oh, there it goes, there it goes, there it goes. There it goes. Oh.
When it comes down,
we do need to put it down now. I think we need to put it down now. Here we go.
We had a collapse of the second tower. Everybody's running from there.
You think you died 3 times, and then people are screaming the building's coming down. And then all of a sudden you feel the rumbling of the floor down the West Side Highway. You just think something's gonna fall on you. You just think you're gonna die.
Have them mobilize the army. We need the army in Manhattan.
Every floor I was trying to be the last man, do a sweep to make sure no one was left behind.
An experienced firefighter had to have an awful lot of fear and concern going into that building. And that's what makes it such a heroic act.
I got to about the 6th floor. All of a sudden, this tremendous noise started, went black, the building was shaking, it was rocking and rolling. We were getting tossed around. I knew that the building was collapsing. I thought it was just a matter of seconds before we're dead.
So we got numerous people trapped here from the previous collapse. We need a hand to get them out, okay? We're about 4 feet under, I really don't know.
All of a sudden, I'm laying in blackness and went deathly silent.
This is Marine 6. I'm on the West Side Highway, I'm pinned. I can't seem to get out, okay?
I was covered in approximately 6 inches of debris. First few seconds, I actually thought I was dead. Saw nothing, heard nothing. I was covered. Started just calling maydays, calling for help.
It is my understanding that all the bridges and tunnels in the city are closed.
This has the signature of Osama bin Laden. He has had pilots on his payroll. Not to say that that's what happened here, but they seem to indicate that this would have that signature.
A fire continues to burn out of control at this hour. At this point, no estimates from Pentagon officials on the number of dead.
I felt the shock of the airplane hitting the building. Went through the building and then out into the area, and they were bringing bodies out that had been injured.
You don't let people hurt. That's the operational rule. We were just focused on, if anybody cried out or was calling out. The people were almost like a still life. They were intact. It was very different, especially because I'd already found a bunch of people who were all burned up. There was this young woman there. She was in civilian clothes. She was very nicely dressed. Her clothes weren't burned. Her name tag, she was the easiest ID I ever did because it was still around the chain around her neck, and it was Angela Holtz. And it was just like being hit by a hammer. He was a real person. This is a beautiful young woman. She obviously was going to leave that evening or that morning or something and go out to her life, and she wasn't ever going to do that.
A lot of volunteers were doing a terrific job helping to bring them out of the buildings.
The president flew directly here from Florida. He is all right. We flew for a couple of hours on Air Force One. We were not told where we would land until the time came. There were jet fighters accompanying the president's aircraft.
Make no mistake, the United States will hunt down and punish those responsible for these cowardly acts.
By the time that the president had gotten to Offutt Air Force Base, nobody was going to tell the president that he couldn't come back. The first thing that he said when he got on the teleconference was, "I'm coming back tonight."
The city of New York and the United States of America is much stronger than any group of barbaric terrorists, that our democracy, that our rule of law, that our strength and our willingness to defend ourselves will ultimately prevail.
Today was supposed to be an election day, at least a primary runoff day in Manhattan for those who would succeed the mayor. That has been canceled.
It was the hardest thing I've ever had to do to try to maintain composure, and I'm not trying to sound macho or anything, but I just figured that, if I break down and cry, which I was very close to doing a couple of times that day, it's not going to help anybody at home process the information that we're trying to bring them. So I said a little silent prayer and just tried to keep going. I hate to wonder how many of your people were there around the base of the Twin Towers when they began collapsing.
I am very worried about them, and saw some of them rush in and go in, and was with them. We were in a building that was trapped for a while. So
thank God that I'm safe. I feel terrible for the people that we've lost, some of whom I talked to just 15 minutes before we lost them, and the city is going to survive. We're going to get through it.
The only thing you could see from where we were was a big gouge in the earth and some broken trees. Nothing that you could distinguish that a plane had crashed there.
Just a few moments ago, World Trade Center building number 7 collapsed. Earlier, we had been warned by firefighting sources that the building was in danger of collapse. Engineers were on the scene. They say the building was structurally very weak.
There was a lot of innocent people that died. All they did was a simple thing. All they did was come to work that morning. They didn't come to do battle.
The people that went to Vietnam knew what they were doing. They trained for that. You don't expect that just going to work in the Pentagon or an office.
He was already very focused and calm. It was remarkable to me. He was not shaken in that sense. The one moment that I could see the horror in his face and his eyes was when of that famous picture of Andy Cart telling him what had happened. He had remarkable composure through this whole period. In fact, was rallying other people.
Terrorist attacks can shake the foundations of our biggest buildings, but they cannot touch the foundation of America. These acts shatter steel, but they cannot dent the steel of American resolve. None of us will ever forget this day, yet we go forward to defend freedom and all that is good and just in our world.
What it did was reaffirm to me that this is a country worth living in, and these are people worth defending, and that there are things in this world that you had to be willing to die for.
I look back and see all these firefighters and these cops who sacrificed their lives because of me. And I pick up the paper and I'm looking back and I'm seeing a memorial service. And the kids are in tears, and I tell myself, that could have been me.
We shared such a powerful experience and depended on each other that day, perhaps for survival. We'll always be in touch.
And the people who knocked these buildings down will hear all of us soon.